Hello. All right. There is beer being handed out. This could not be a better way to serve things up. Thank you. I see sparkling water as well, so that's perfect. So if you don't want a beer, it looks like there's sparkling water for you. That's great. Unfortunately, there's not a bottle of gin under here for me, but I will take care of that later. No, I'm good. Thank you very much. Holy crap. This is awesome. Can you guys, everyone hear me? If you can hear me in the back, say monkey. You said monkey. My name is Boone Sheridan. I am lucky enough to have been working in UX in some form or another for so long that the job titles change and I just stopped saying what the specifics are. The last thing I said was really I'm a UX something something, and I let the recruiters or the clients tell me what they want the title to be. So closing is kind of important because the person who speaks last should be able to put a lot of what we've seen in context. And I think over the past 2 days, there's been a fun couple of threads from Lou to Chandra, Kat to Adam, from Caroline to Ashley and to Donna. There have been these great themes running through all of what we've heard. And I've been taking notes about what do you know that you can take action on? Sometimes you have the time to do research. Sometimes you have to get, and I'm going to apologize because I'm going to swear a little bit, you have to get shit done. Your clients need you. Your community needs you. Your partners need you. And it's all about making things better for the people around you, which is, I think, as you all know from Dan, we want that, right? We're looking for more of that. But also heard some amazing things about coaching and sharing. It's not just doing it by yourself, it's making those better around you, making those around you better. Yeah, I'll reverse that later. It's not just doing something for yourself, it's finding a way to make it mean a little bit more, and that's always kind of cool. Because doing stuff for yourself is great, but doing stuff for others tends to have a more lasting impact. However, because we are here to talk about something that is largely about the internet, I'm here to talk about cats. I'm here specifically to talk about the cat I grew up with, that is Cash, and my incredibly handsome brother when we were young lads. Oh, I'm all good, thank you. And as I was growing older, in high school, we had Cash. I went out to college, the cat got a little older, and one day when I was living in Austin, Texas, my dad called me and said, I think Cash is it's the last years of her life. She's getting a little old, and I think she's going deaf. I'll come around a corner and I'll surprise her, which is always kind of weird with a cat because cats almost always go, oh crap, who are you? But he was a little worried, so he called the vet and said, I want to bring Cash in for her checkup, and I'd also like to find out if she's deaf. And the veterinarian said, great, there's a hearing test for cats. And my dad went, what? This is amazing. And this is in the early 2000s, and my dad wasn't necessarily a completely internet-savvy guy, so he started doing research on what it means to give a cat a hearing test, not a hearing test. And the idea was, I should have had that beer. There are things that you can do. You can do an electromuscular test and watch scientific on a graph how muscles react in the ears when you play noises for an animal. It's amazing, and there's this detailed science behind it. My dad was amazed. He called the vet and said, okay, I'm going to bring her in for the hearing test. So it came time for my father to bring the cat in for the test. And they came in, put her on the table, and all the basics were done. You know, check the eyes, check the ears, take the temperature. No one likes that. And they were getting close to the end, and my father said, well, we were going to do the hearing test. And the vet said, oh, right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to stand behind the cat, you stand in front of her, and make sure you look her right in the eyes. And so my father sat there, and he said, okay, Cash, this is going to be it. And the vet walked up behind and said, are you looking at the cat? He said, yes. And the vet went, your cat's deaf, that'll be $50. And obviously my father was heartbroken because the vet instantly went, oh no, you had totally different expectations, didn't you? He said, I thought there would be science. He goes, oh, the science is wonderful, but this is a house cat, not a $5 million thoroughbred racehorse. And I love that story so much because I feel like I've clapped for clients and they've gone, wait, I thought we were a $5 million racehorse. And there's that sense of what we do for our clients, what we do for our partners, and sometimes the simplest stuff is still the best. Sometimes the things that aren't sexy, don't win an award, don't get you a paper, don't make headlines, but they're still amazing. But actually, I came here to talk about email etiquette and meetings. Because I'll send the URL out for that company later. It's awesome. I was on an email chain at a company where everybody got involved. It was one of those email chains that started between dev and design. And within the space of about 4 hours, somehow 3 VPs, an SVP, a DVP, which I'd never heard of, managed to get. Somehow catering was even on the email. I don't know how this happened. But this huge email chain begins, and what started as a simple question about how we were going to fix a part of an interface turned into this long, detailed discussion where someone suddenly said, I don't know why we're talking about this. There must be a rule somewhere. Why are we talking about this if there's a rule? And it blew my mind because I said, challenge accepted. I took 10 minutes, and I took the position one way, and I found about 5 good citations. I took the opposite position, and in about 10 minutes, I found another 5 citations. And I went to the DVP, who was apparently, like the demon VP, and said, I don't want to do this in public, but I want you to pick which one you would like, because the evidence that you can find easily will support either way. And then before I picked one, I said, or you can trust me to do the right thing. And it was a very interesting moment because he was reaching for the paper when I went, oh, please, just it's your job. I'll let you do the right thing. And I was amazed because finally it's like, oh, there's that moment. Trust, human trust, so rare. It also meant that the noose was around my neck if things went wrong, but that's why he's a DVP. So this idea of there must be a rule, there must be something new, there must be some way to do things. All of the ways that we like to do our work, all the ways that we like to talk about our work, as Donna so rightly noted, and as people have been talking about through the day, how do you get stuff done? Because you have to have life after it depends. If the answer is, well, we want to do it, we'd like to put something in front of our customers under this scenario. What do you think we should do? Well, it depends. Are they existing customers? Are they new customers? Are they prospects? What are we going to do? There has to be something other than, let me go do some research, let me take a bunch of time, let me stack things up, and let's go ahead and go through this game of which stack of research do you like the best. Because the truth is, all of these things that we've talked about, Donna talked about the 3-click rule, the rule of 7 plus or minus 2, we have Fitts' law, the principle of pictorial realism. All of these rules that we grew up with as designers years ago, some are still incredibly valid, some are completely invalid now. The research has been blown out of proportion. Or, what I like to think as human beings, we've adapted to technology in ways that old rules don't matter anymore. When a CRT was this big and you could only see 800 by 600, size mattered. Right? You could only put 7 things in navigation because otherwise you'd have to stack monitors up, and monitors were expensive back then, right? Not to mention the fact that it'd break your back picking one up. And something that came up in the earlier discussions yesterday, or one of the talks yesterday, was also this challenge of, we love listicles, right? People love small, bite-sized bits of information. So when they're researching something, they don't want to read a paper. They want it broken down to, okay, when you're doing things on mobile, you do this, 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 and this. Great. When I'm doing a kiosk, I do this, 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 and this. When I'm crying in a fetal position, I do this, 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 and this. It's okay. But the work we are doing changes. This is pretty much where I started at a startup in Austin, Texas a long time ago. There's one of those huge-ass monitors. And all the things I learned back then had to change. The other part of all of this discussion is when you do decide to make a decision, and this is especially on a social network, anyone, pick one, when you take a position of some importance, this happens. There's always some joker who jumps out of the woodwork and says, "Oh, citation, please. Could you tell me where you read that?" And what could be a simple, quick conversation turns into something a lot more detailed, and it becomes argumentative, and that doesn't help anyone. So what I'm trying to understand in myself is we want just the interesting and beautiful. We don't like to get bogged down in the details if we don't have to. We want the fluff. I don't know if fluff is over here. Marshmallow fluff is something in the United States, primarily in the Northeast. It is sugar, egg whites, and magic. And I heard an Australian friend once describe it as, it's Vegemite, but it's just marshmallow melted and melted and melted. And I think I had a heart attack while I was describing it. I'm like, that's it, that's the stuff. And our clients don't always want to see how the sausage gets made, right? Exposing long discussions hinders work. It's great when you're coaching someone and saying, hey, I want to take you through the 15 steps to get to the right answer. But when the rubber meets the road, the pedal hits the metal, your motorcycle is covered in dirt, then suddenly you want to take action. And I found myself struggling. It was a really big problem for me because I'd consumed so much information, and I was starting to spend time with junior practitioners, spending time with people who were shifting over to UX as a new career. And all these questions of, okay, I got my first project with this, how do I deal with it? And go, oh, well, you pull out this, you pull out that. There's got to be a simpler way. There's got to be some sense. And my answer was to go back and do a very detailed, incredibly geeky look at the knowledge I'd collected over the years. And it was this idea of how do I pull all the things I've learned and make it give it shape and understand the beauty of knowledge is that it's additive. The things you learn over the years, they add on to each other. You learn something and it doesn't take away. The more you know, I mean, it's just like the old PSAs. The more you know, it helps. And what I had to do is I sat down and said, what do I know? It sounds simple enough, but if you sit down and look at the things you've learned, your principles, your practice, this idea of these wonderful rules for forms, where do those come from? How did those come about? What work did you do that created the knowledge that gave you that confidence? The big question was, how do I know what I know? And that's scary. Trying to go back, I said, well, let's look at the literature. What are the books that I've had on my bookshelf for forever? What are the things that I could show to someone and they could read and we could discuss and we could come to a common understanding and understand, are they still valid? The Polar Bear book has gone through its 4th iteration. Why? Because things have changed. Great books in our field should go through multiple iterations. They don't always. But when times change and facts change, your opinion should change. And more importantly, when talking to my clients and my partners, how much was I comfortable with? I was still sharing stuff, and I went, I've been telling people to go look at this for a long time, and maybe it doesn't fit anymore. And it scared me that I was passing along bad information or being wrong, but I really had to go through and say, maybe it's just a game now. My own knowledge, I don't want to say gamification, but sometimes it's just roll the dice and see what works. And it led me to this idea of what do I need to rethink? No matter where you are in your career, what knowledge have you collected? And you sit down and say, all right, I know this, I can put this together with this. Suddenly this book is important, suddenly this book doesn't mean as much anymore. How does this all come together? So I started digging and digging. The old stuff, the really old stuff, a lot of new stuff, and trying to answer this sense of how do I design and redesign my process? And I think this is something that was frightening because I found something from 2008 of how I actually designed. This was a diagram I drew because it was a case of I was one of the first people to do UX for this company, and they said, we need a UX process. And I said, okay, as long as it involves tequila, I'll do it. I'll put it together. And I showed this to someone a little while ago, and how frightening is it? I've got best practices right there. We were struggling to understand what UX was, and US best practices was right in there. I was drinking the Kool-Aid because there was nothing else to drink back then besides tequila. Someone also noticed in their requirements. You know how the days of building where you had to inherit requirements and build specifically to those requirements? I had a wonderful discussion with someone today at the lunch break talking about the roles and the differences between business analysts and UX people. And the idea that BAs used to control all the requirements, and over the years, UX groups start picking up the requirements. BAs get a little cheesed off, UX people get a little cheesed off, and suddenly no one's happy anymore. It's like, well, how do we work with requirements? Went a little further. 2010, I did this for a team. Again, I was one of the first UX people, and I was trying to give people some rules to live by. And I was a little bit better. And it's kind of interesting when you think of things like, we used to talk about banner blindness. Very specific to the time, the idea that people just don't see banners. We didn't realize that banners would become 95% of the content on a page. But you know, there are things that you'll still hear today. Write for scannability, add value, don't make users think, let people just find what they want, and don't hide the goal. Whether it's mobile, whether it's a kiosk, whether it's a website, you know, there's so many different things in here that still mattered. So I think I was getting a little bit better. And this turned into, finally, 3 big stacks of information. I called them rules, hunches, and coin flips. Ladies and gentlemen, we have title. And there was this idea of the things I know and the things I choose to work with and I believe, what are my rules? Rules to me were the things that I knew, the things I was confident with, that I didn't have to discuss, I could just pop off, we could do them. Let's no point ask people, trust me, we've got this one. I know how to make this cocktail. This I can do with my eyes closed, I don't need to look up anything, we'll just make it happen. The next were hunches, things that might have changed a little bit because of behavior or because of technology, right? All the things that I used to work on with its normal screens, touch changed everything. Some things are still valid, but now it's more like, okay, now that I have a screen, now that I have touch, what has to change about my process? What has to change about my designs? More specifically, when we're thinking about content coming through in smaller chunks and different platforms, you know, things that I believe in, but we can make some changes. It's that idea of, I pretty much know how to do it, but I'll put a dash of this, no, dash of that. I can make it work, but it might take a tweak or two. And then there was the coin flips. And this was fun because it's something that it was 50-50. So it was stuff I had to go maybe relearn again. In this case, I asked my favorite bartender, I want to know what the best type of rum is. And he said, we're going to figure that out tonight. We're going to taste rum until you can't see. Because I said, I thought I knew rum. Turns out I didn't. I thought I knew what usability testing on a mobile device was about a year ago, a year and a half ago. Turns out I didn't. Had to re-educate myself and had some friends spend some time with me and smack me on the hand with a ruler a couple of times as I learned new habits. But it was all about learning those new ideas, coming to some sense of stability about what I believed and what I could then pass on and share, instead of constantly saying, well, it depends, let's rephrase, let's do some research, let's reframe, let's take away clarity from a question. Instead, let's bring the clarity, let's get fast clarity. Those words didn't make sense. And doing all this, you know, besides the fact that it was a personal challenge, you know, why the bleep do you people care? Why? Because I think we're all struggling with this as information is flying back and forth. UX is now such a robust, I don't want to say happy industry because we're all still cranky to I think a lot of my best UX people are cranky to the core. Lou Rosenfeld, ladies and gentlemen. But information is flying, And the simple fact is, in the time it's going to take me to give this talk, over in America, 4 Medium articles have been published as new manifestos on why you will never do this again, and 12 reasons you're never going to usability test. And someone's completely invented something between waterfall and agile, and I don't even know what they're calling it anymore. But our partners are reading that. Our clients are reading it. It's information that's out there. We can't ignore it. We have to try to respond to it. Here's something I think is not said enough. Because the ignorance of opinions of others is no vice. If you're confident in what you believe, push it forward. Make sure that it's meaningful. If you believe in something, tell someone, don't look it up. We've got this. We can make this work, especially when you're dealing with partners. Especially when you're dealing with junior employees who are like, where should I go to read up on the newest trends? Read the solid stuff. You want a trend? We'll play Family Feud, right? This idea that Family Feud was my favorite game show growing up. I watched it with my grandmother almost every day, it seems like, for 6 years. Sometimes I think I spent more time with it than my grandfather. Family Feud took a whole bunch of random questions. We surveyed 100 people, top 6 answers on the board. What's the best way to test usability in mobile? An iPhone and pray? Survey said, 65 people said, all right, so that's enough. But we could make a version of Family Feud for UX, and I've been thinking about doing it at the IA Summit for years, but it's a lot of effort. But we've hit this point now where you can put a serious question down and find the equal and opposite. These are key parts of what we do in user experience, and it took me less than 5 minutes on Twitter to find people pushing either side, and that is user experience is everyone's job. The folks who will say everyone in a company contributes to user experience. And then you get folks who go, user experience is a specialist's field. When everyone does UX, the UX stinks. Everyone means well, and the other part is when UX is everyone's job, it's nobody's job. One of my favorites, mobile first. Mobile first was the charge for the longest time. And then suddenly someone said, there's no such thing as mobile. If you're designing for mobile, you're missing the boat. You're missing devices. You're missing embedded devices. There's a guy, Jason Grigsby, who's a wonderful, wonderful gent, and he has this running project where he finds browsers embedded in devices all over the world. He travels a bit and he speaks a ton. He's Griggs on Twitter, and he's found embedded browsers in stair-stepper machines and hotel gyms. He's found hotel browsers embedded in toasters. I mean, we're talking about the Internet of Things earlier. It's like it's not just that your toaster's going to talk to you. It's going to have a browser and play a Vine and toast is ready. I should never do that move again. Another favorite here is, and I think this is part of what I heard yesterday. Like, people say it's wrong to guess. You should have data. You should wrap your personas in data. Which was all, for me, that's just, it's like a hot dog wrapped in bacon. It's so delicious. But I think earlier there was a talk of, what if you don't have time? What if you value constraints? Lean and Agile are all about, you got to get things done. We've got a sprint. If you can't get it done during the sprint, you've failed our partners. You've failed the team. You haven't done your thing. So when you have constraints, sometimes people say, we have 3 days and no research budget. Let's come up with some personas. Nothing wrong with that. But that sense of you can argue it either way, and if a client, you have to make sense of it to yourself, like which do we value at the moment? This is the one that gets me. Plan like each release is your last. Startup culture in San Francisco especially is that idea of, I've heard someone say, man, if the release goes out and it's not the thing you totally believe in, it shouldn't go out. And then across the road, you've got someone who says, oh, no. We do a release every 3 or 4 days, and iteration and flexibility is totally it. Well, what? Pick one! I got a schedule. Pick one. I think you heard Lou talk about this, that there's no real reason not to prototype anymore. There's so many wonderful tools, there's so many wonderful platforms. Depending on what you do, you can do physical or electronic prototyping, browser prototyping, platform prototyping. And people say, if you're not prototyping, you're dead. Forget it. Everyone's moved on, right? I worked at a job where if it wasn't in a prototype, the product manager wouldn't look at it, and I admire that. But I met someone who's done a lot of code, and he said, prototypes are great, but if they're not production level code, they don't help my devs at all. They're really pretty. That's a beautiful prototype you built me. Did you do it in compliant code? Did you stress test it? Do you think I'm going to let it loose on my server? How are you supposed to pick? Here's one that I hope is near and dear to Donna's heart. That idea of information needs organizing. Except sometimes imposing structure is a crime, right? Remember when folksonomies were going to take over the world? That didn't quite happen. I laugh because I know someone at Flickr, and I feel so bad because they tried, man. But tagging, hashtagging, it's like, why give structure? Let people structure the information. There's great times when you say, let the people sort out what it means to them. You know, that idea of what Donna said, a topic or a category should be something you can feel and see. But this idea of somewhere else, what's a hashtag? Can you let how do you organize a set of hashtags? Another one. Patterns. Pattern libraries and patterns supporting design are fantastic. You see a lot of work spent in companies setting up a pattern library so that developers and designers don't have to recreate from scratch. I need to create a form. Great, we've got a pattern for that. Especially when you're dealing with your non-technical folks, right? You've got business partners who say, I want to design a login screen. Great, here's the pattern library. There's no question about what it's going to look like. And then you turn around and you have some design guru saying, well, if it's a template, like, what are you? Pick one and let us move. Finally, especially when it's time to negotiate salary, people value your expertise. The idea of, we want someone with 18 years of information architecture experience, when information architecture had only been around for 10. You know, the idea that when someone introduced Swift, the first ad went out for a recruiter and said, we're looking for someone with 3 years of Swift experience. I kid, some of my favorite people are recruiters. But have you ever worked on a project where someone said, we are really excited to have you on here, and there's a sense of, we want a beginner's mind. We don't want you to bring your biases to the project. We want you to approach this with a clean slate. I had a client who said, we want you to come on and be a fresh set of eyes. We want you to leave your biases at the door and view this with an incredibly, like just a blank slate, tabula rasa, whatever the metaphors you want to use. I said, that's fantastic. And they said, so of course we'll be paying you a slightly smaller rate. I said, it's not beginner's mind you want, it's the beginner's rate that you wanted. And in all of these questions, who gets to decide, right? It's all about, in the moment, how you get to make your case. My fear is that if it takes too long to make the case, you've lost the moment of action, you've lost the ability to strike, you lose time into discussions, you lose time into frivolous arguments, you lose time into, oh, I found this Medium article, well, I found this Medium article, well, I found something in UX Booth, well, I found something in UX Matters, well, I found something tweeted yesterday, I found something tweeted 2 seconds ago. We don't have Richard Dawson available. I miss that man so much. I watch Hogan's Heroes again just to see him every now and then. But we have so much information to draw from. We have so much to help us make our decisions, right? We're living in, it's not even, big data isn't even the case anymore. We're beyond big data. And the thing for me is, I'm just scared to death that big data doesn't mean big wisdom. It means, hey, thank you. We have all of this information at our disposal, but spend a little time with it, get comfortable with it. So it's not a case of, I'll have that answer for you in 15 minutes, hang up the phone and fire up Google. You know, it's this sense of taking the time to dig through your own, wherever you are, I'm jumping all over my sentences, this is awesome. Wherever you are in your career, early, mid, late, expert, take a little bit of time to think about what's your library of books? What's your library of ideas? What are you really comfortable with? If someone said, hey, I want to do this, I've got a project, I've got an idea, where are you going to pull that information from, and are you comfortable with it? You know, do you reach back for a book and go, you know, this thing hasn't been touched in 6 years. Whew. I wonder if that's still, is this still right? Let me crack it open. Is the spine cracked in a little while? And what I would love everyone here to think about at some point in time between drinks is just ask yourself, what are your rules? What are your hunches? What are your coin flips? Thank you.